everything.
You said before that you used to be a Christian. I just wanted to know the reason why you stopped being a Christian.
The day I was reborn in Christ.
Okay, can you detail that a little bit?
That day, I found myself just kind of like floating around in a euphoria, like a daze. It often happens. It doesn't happen just to Christians either. I've heard people talk about accepting Krishna and going through. The Beatles talked about something similar. So I know it happens in every religion. But I remember asking a friend of mine who is now a Southern Baptist minister running a Christian school who really teaches creationism.
Oh.
Yeah, but he was my best friend in high school. I asked him, how do I know that this is really Jesus and that I'm not just fooling myself? And he grabbed me by both shoulders with a huge beaming smile and said, just keep telling yourself it's Jesus until you believe it.
Right.
Instantly not a Christian anymore.
Wow, he really dropped the ball there.
That was so dishonest. Now, he really believes in fake it till you make it.
I see.
He preaches that. Lie to yourself until you believe it. That's his faith.
Just an interesting point. Is there not some truth to that of when you something akin to a concept like manifesting destiny, a certain thing of that if you want to will something into existence, it might in some sense manifest itself in your life. I don't mean actually. I mean in your perceptions.
I know that people believe that if they believe that there are people who believe that if I believe hard enough, then reality will change according to the power of their will.
Right.
And if it doesn't, they've convinced themselves anyway, so they wouldn't know if it hadn't.
That's it. Yeah.
So it's either way, it's a delusion.
Yeah. But I mean, just trying to understand that what that Baptist preacher was saying to you is not historical Christianity. Historical Christianity would say, my understanding of it would be, not that you just believe it, even though despite the evidence, you believe it in line with the evidence. There's always been. So I would say that there is evidence in form of Christianity for theism and for Christian theism specifically.
Okay, pick one.
Yeah, so I would say, what you want to go theism or?
It's not first time.
Yeah, I know. So okay, the way I'll think about it is that I would say that the evidence has to render the hypothesis probable. And the way that we can understand that is the simplest hypothesis that leads us to expect the evidence is most probably true. I would say that there is a God. The proposition, the hypothesis that there is a God is the simplest hypothesis that we have that leads us to expect the evidence of, number one, that there is a universe, that this universe exists.
We're going to assume there's a God and therefore there must be a universe?
No. So I'm saying when you're looking at an inductive hypothesis, you will formulate the hypothesis and then you will have to...
Sure. How do you do? All right.
When you're looking at an inductive hypothesis, you will formulate the hypothesis, H, and you'll have the evidence, and you'll say, well, by a certain criteria, does this hypothesis lead us to expect the evidence when we would not expect it? So if the hypothesis was false, we would not expect to have this evidence.
Okay, so as we mentioned before,
yes,
evidence is the fact that indicates. So what is the fact that indicates a God?
No, so evidence is just simply a proposition that corresponds to reality.
It's a body of facts.
Yeah, so you can state it that way. Okay, so the proposition that there is a universe, that the universe exists. Okay, we're not disputing it. That's the evidence. Now,
no, that's not evidence. That's the fact.
Yeah, but I'm saying an evidence, you're taking it in as evidence.
But that's circular reasoning. That's the question-begging fallacy.
How is that? Sorry.
That's assuming. That's calling it creation, expecting a creator.
No.
When if we call it reality, we don't expect a realtor.
No. So can I explain? So when you are looking at something, you will go and say, this is evidence that I am then trying to explain by my hypothesis. If my hypothesis fails to explain it, then it cannot be evidence that supports
All right, and in order to be a hypothesis, it has to be testable.
Yes.
And falsifiable.
No, I would not say that. Depends.
Well, then it can't be tested.
No. So I will try and...
If you can't falsify it, it can't test it.
One second. I'll try and say... One second. I'll try and say firstly, the reason why I denied it at the beginning is because it depends how you define falsifiability. So if you can just explain to me what you mean by falsifiability.
If anything is, if you propose a hypothesis, there has to be a way. You can't always prove it right.
Yes.
Right. So I mean, there's a rule that you can't prove anything right in science.
Yes.
Because if you do, then we lead to the religious thing about asserting absolute truth.
Right. Yes.
But you can prove things false.
Yes.
So if you have propose a hypothesis, first it must be backed by evidence. We still haven't got to that. The hypothesis has to be based on evidence for there to be a hypothesis. We still don't have evidence of God. then the hypothesis there has to be a way to disprove it. If it's wrong, there has to be a way to show that it is wrong. So if you have a hypothesis that there is a God, there's got to be a way to test it.
Yes.
And if it fails that test, it proves there is no God.
Yes. So I would say, okay, there is a certain criteria that you'll utilize, scientific criteria or historical criteria when you're trying to assess a hypothesis. Does the evidence I have support the hypothesis according to this criteria?
Okay, let's
so
start
firstly,
with,
I would say...
First, you have to have the evidence for the hypothesis. So what evidence...
I'm not disputing that, but can I just say about the criteria first?
Right.
See if you agree with me with the criteria or not. Okay, so firstly, the hypothesis has to lead us to expect the evidence. Okay. Secondly, the evidence cannot...
Why would it lead us to expect... Okay, so that's if the hypothesis passed, then we would put down a prediction. If the hypothesis is successful, it would be like this. Can't prove it right, but it lines up with what we predicted. That's what you're saying?
No, so I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying if you are saying something is so, and you are bringing in something to say why it is so, the thing that you are bringing as a hypothesis that explains that data needs to explain the data. So I'll give you an example. Can I give you an example? So I don't agree with the moral argument that people bring for the existence of God. Okay, so you have people like William Lane Craig and other Christian philosophers who will bring in the moral argument that says moral values support God's existence. I don't believe that. I believe moral values are necessary. They're necessary moral principles, and they will exist irrespective of God. So you cannot use that as evidence because it will be there even if the hypothesis was false. Okay. But if you have a hypothesis that leads you to expect the evidence when it should not be expected, then that can be used as evidence for the hypothesis.
It sounds like you're talking about testing a hypothesis, and the hypothesis doesn't fail.
Okay, yes.
Okay, so it aligns with what you predicted. If I'm right, we should expect data like this.
Yeah,
the hypothesis produces data like this, so you might be right.
Yes.
Okay, but there also has to be a way to falsify it.
Yes,
or it doesn't qualify.
Yes. So if the hypothesis claims that something is so, okay, and that doesn't happen, okay, you don't find the evidence or whatever, then you can go and say that evidence then renders the hypothesis as improbable.
Okay, so how do we show a falsifiable hypothesis for God?
Okay, so I would simply go through the procedure of saying, okay, firstly the criteria that we should expect the evidence, that the evidence shouldn't, we shouldn't find the evidence if the hypothesis was false.
Okay.
It has to fit with our background evidence or background knowledge of the world.
Okay.
And then fourthly, it has to be a simple hypothesis.
Okay.
So I would go and say that the propositional hypothesis that there is a God, that there is a personal being who's omnipotent, omniscient, and perfectly good, is the simplest hypothesis that leads us to expect, number one,
the simplest hypothesis would be if you didn't add that he's perfectly good.
Oh, no.
The simplest not be that there was no creator at all.
No.
And it just exists.
No, 1 second.
Yeah, that's much more simple.
So okay. 1 second. Can I explain?
Sure.
So I would say that, just not going to that point first, let me just explain to him and then, okay. So that there is a God is the simplest hypothesis that leads us to expect, number one, that there is a universe, that the universe is conformed to simple natural laws.
Okay. Well, I have to agree with him. The simplest hypothesis is where we don't add a God.
No, why would that be?
Because we're adding something.
Yes.
We don't need to add.
But then, if you say there is no God, you then have to go and say, what is the ultimate reality? What is the ultimate explanation for that there is a universe? Yes, the universe itself.
Okay.
But the universe itself is not simple.
I'm not saying that the universe is evidence of the universe.
No, I'm not saying it's evidence for the universe.
Okay.
But there has to be an ultimate explanation for why there is a universe. And you will go and say, well,
what if we don't know it?
It's a brute fact.
What if we don't know it?
You might say it's a brute fact.
No. What if we say we don't know?
Yes, so you'll go and say it's a brute fact.
No, well, there is a universe. We'll accept.
Yes.
We're not in dispute. There is a universe.
But we don't have an explanation.
How did the universe come about? I think the honest answer is I don't know.
Yes.
And I think the dishonest answer is a God did it.
Yes. Oh no, but by the way, I'm not saying about the universe coming into existence. Okay. Like myself, I don't believe the Kalam cosmological argument's a good argument. Okay, I really don't, because I would agree with your position that maybe the best position to be scientifically is agnostic about the issue. Okay, but I would go in and say that my whole point about bringing about the universe is the contingency of the universe. That there is a universe in the first place, even if it's been here for an infinite amount of time or for a finite amount of time, cries out for an explanation. Because it is simpler, like you said, that there is nothing at all.
That's still the question-begging fallacy.
Why is it
assuming that existence requires an existor?
No, I wouldn't. I would just simply say that you should have less brute facts within your worldview. that you should try and that's the whole point. Yes.
You mentioned that you had evidence for God.
Yes.
What is it?
Okay. So I said to you firstly, taken in as evidence that there is a universe, which you would agree with me.
Okay, so
there is a universe, and we are not
fact of
debating.
the universe.
Yes, there is a fact of the universe.
What is the evidence of God?
So then you go and say, should that, going according to the criteria, should there be a universe irrespective of God?
Yes.
Why?
Because nobody believes in absolute philosophical nothing. Not even the cosmologists believe in absolute philosophical nothing.
What do you mean by absolute philosophical nothing? Just so I understand.
Absolute nothing.
Okay, so
Right,
absolute nothing.
There logically has to be something rather than nothing, because nothing is not possible.
Why is nothing not possible? Sorry.
Physicists, they say nothing is not
No, but you said philosophically, so I'm trying to understand. Metaphysically, why is nothing impossible? Because to show that nothing is impossible, you have to derive
Well, if you think about it this way,
contradiction
if
from that.
If
No, I don't see
anywhere
it.
there
Yes.
is nothing,
Yes.
then the place where there is nothing has a boundary, and that boundary is something. And that already precludes that you can't have anything anywhere if you have nothing
Yes.
somewhere.
But you're using the modal term can and cannot. You are saying that it's logically impossible. Logical impossibility is a very strong statement.
Yeah.
Because you are saying nothing. The statement nothing
Right.
entails a contradiction. Same thing like a married bachelor entails a contradiction. That's why it's
Right.
logically impossible.
Right,
How
so-
is that there is nothing entails a contradiction?
Well, I did just explain that.
No, but it doesn't entail a contradiction. To entail a contradiction, you then define the terms and they cancel
If
each other
nothing exists,
Yes.
and if nothing exists somewhere,
Yes.
and something exists somewhere else, then the place for the nothing is a place
In
for the
relation
nothing.
to the something.
out. Yes.
Something.
And it's a boundary with it, so it's a something.
Yes.
So
No, but-
absolute nothing is not possible.
No,
if
but
there's
you used
something
two different.
somewhere,
You used two
there
different
can't be-
terms. You said nothing exists somewhere. You didn't say everywhere. If you said nothing,
It doesn't matter.
One second.
Nothing can't exist anywhere if something exists somewhere else.
Exactly. If you said nothing existed everywhere, but there is something, then those things will contradict each other.
So-
but you said nothing exists somewhere and something exists somewhere. How does that cancel each other out?
So
yes.
the hypothesis is
Yes.
So whether there is a God or
Yes.
not, there's something instead of nothing. So
Yes.
where is the fact that indicates the God?
Okay, so I was trying to say to you, firstly, that there is a universe, that the universe exists, because it is not logically necessary that there is a universe. It is a logical contingent fact.
Nor is it relevant.
Sorry?
Nor is it relevant.
Why is it irrelevant?
Well, I don't know what you're referring
Yes.
to by a universe at this,
Yes.
because you say a universe.
So I'm saying the totality of reality that
Okay,
it
so
could be a
so we
multiverse,
agree
it could be whatever.
That
Yes.
with a God or
Yes.
without a God, there's still something rather than nothing.
No, but I'm saying why should there be? That's the whole question.
Because it's impossible to have absolute nothing. Because
I
if something
think- yeah, I
exists
think you're-
somewhere, logically, there can't be nothing anywhere.
No, but I'm trying to say to you that that doesn't link up what you are saying.
Okay,
trying-
then
yes.
we're just not going to get past
Okay,
this point.
yeah. All I was just trying to say to you is that if you have a contingent fact, you are then trying to explain the contingent fact.
Okay,
By
so-
putting a hypothesis that
All
explains
right.
the fact.
So, in
yes.
my hypothesis,
Yes,
okay,
yes.
no God,
No God, yes.
no nothing.
No, nothing, okay.
It's not possible to have nothing.
Yes,
so
okay.
we have to have
Okay.
something.
Yes.
That something takes the
Yes.
form of a universe.
Yes.
God or no God, we have a universe.
God or no God, we have yes.
Right. So
Okay, go with-
where's
along
the
with
indicator that there's a God?
Okay. So I'm simply saying to you that let's say you're not assuming that there is a God, or you're not putting the God as a hypothesis, that there is a universe, okay?
Right,
we
it's
agree.
unnecessary.
Okay, we agree on it. But then you have to go and say, either you take the universe as existence, that exists in the here and now, as a brute fact. We don't know, we might never know, it's just a brute fact. And there are some things in reality which are brute facts, which we can't explain, okay? So you will have to take it as that, or you have to go and say that there is a deeper, more ultimate explanation for the universe, which we might
Why
not
do
have
we
at the
have
moment.
to have an explanation?
No, I just said to you, you have two options. So either you take it as a brute fact, you say there is no explanation, and there cannot be
We
an
don't have to
explanation.
say there
we
is
don't
no
know it.
explanation.
Or I was going to
What
say...
if we don't know
Yes.
the explanation?
One second.
So
Yes.
we expect that there probably is one.
Yes, one second.
We don't know what the explanation
Yes.
is. What is your evidence
Yes.
that the explanation
Yes.
is a God?
Yes, because I'm saying to you that it's, according to the criteria that you agreed with me, it actually fulfills the criteria. Because if you think about it, if
The
there...
criteria I agreed
Yes.
with is that God or no God, we have a universe.
No, that wasn't the criteria we said at the beginning. So the criteria we said at the beginning that you can generally use for a scientific or historical hypothesis is, if the hypothesis is true, it should lead us to explain, to expect the evidence.
All right.
Yes.
let's understand it.
Yes.
To form the hypothesis,
Yes.
you must have evidence indicating the thing that you're looking at.
No, that's not
So
necessarily
you use
true.
the
You're assuming
you have evidence that indicates a
it's a
God.
hypothesis of no
You then
evidence.
come up with a hypothesis to test that evidence to see if it is.
No. It depends what type of probability theory you're holding to.
What if you don't hold the probability theory?
One second. So if you're holding, sorry.
Depends your methodology.
Yes. So I'm saying it depends on probability theory that you're holding to.
Yeah, I don't like
no,
that
what's-
because the probability that I did everything I did yesterday at the exact time that I did everything I did in that exact order, if you measure up all those, how improbable all those things are, it's impossible.
Yes.
And yet I did it.
One second, but I'm not arguing against that. I'm saying to you, it depends, your position that you just said depends on the probability theory that you're holding to. What I was talking about here is a logical...
I disagree.
One second.
Probability has nothing to do with it.
Yes, it does. Of course it does. We were
Well,
talking
of
about
course it
hypotheses. Sorry, 1 second.
How is
It
it
doesn't.
possible to create
Yes.
a probability of God?
What do you mean, how is it possible
Because
to explain that
to
more?
say that something is probable, you must be able to say that something isn't probable. And how do we get factors to relate to the probability of an ultimate being?
No,
I don't
so-
see how I could think
so
what's the probability.
you can
of it.
use things like Bayes' theorem. Bayes' theorem is a theorem of probability. So simply you have
Every
a...
atheist uses. So
Yeah, atheists can use it. I'm saying generally you can use it for
can
anything.
use.
No, I'm saying anyone. I said anyone can use it. Doctors use it. It's just a simple probability factor. So you can use Bayes' theorem, have a hypothesis, have the evidence, and go and see if the evidence is likely given the hypothesis, and see if the evidence is likely given.
that
Yes.
evidence?
So I was simply saying to you, firstly, we have a contingent fact here that there is a universe. We have another contingent.
So what is the evidence
One second,
that the universe
you're
was brought
jumping
about by a God?
You're jumping in. Can we get there first? Lay down the evidence, and then we can say does it explain or not.
I don't think we've
Yes.
laid down any
Yeah,
evidence.
I'm saying can we do that? I'm saying can we do
I'm
that?
asking you to do that.
Yeah, I'm saying can, but you jump in.
Hold
So
on
it's
just a
quite
second. I'm
difficult.
sorry. Hello?
Can you, well, just while he's talking that,
Yes.
have you defined what you mean by God?
Yes.
I'm
Oh,
surrounded
no,
by people and cameras.
Well,
Because that seems to be the first thing.
Firstly, no, I think I
Yes,
did.
I'm surrounded by
slightly.
people and
Because I came
cameras.
into
So
the
quick,
conversation.
what
I
is
think I
it?
did slightly, yes. But firstly, we're trying to say evidence, but he's jumping in a little
What?
bit. So, and then dismissing and saying it's not evidence, and then saying I need to
I
bring
can't
evidence.
hear
But
you.
I mean, I need to understand what you
Okay,
mean
so
by God.
what I would say simply
Okay, I
by
will.
is that there is a personal being who's omnipotent, omniscient, and perfectly.
Sorry.
Right. Okay, so we've got that. So we know now where you stand.
Okay.
Right. So that's what needs falsifying.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Yeah. I'll do it. Okay. So I would say to just going with that evidence.
What evidence? I
It's
missed
just
it.
define God and us.
Can I get there? Because you're jumping in. You're jumping in.
You've had the floor,
Yes.
and you keep going. I'm not, this is
Yes.
disrespectful.
No, of course not.
But
Yes.
all I'm going to say is,
Yes.
you keep coming around with the same arguments.
Yeah.
He's asked you at least 3 or 4
Yes.
times
Yes.
your view,
Yes.
your life view,
Yes.
or your view on God,
Yes.
or show
What
the
is that evidence?
Yes.
But you
But-
honestly haven't started.
Do you know what happens though? Do you know what happens when I'm saying? One second.
Can you not just get past
But-
this
but what-
initial hurdle and then talk about?
But can I finish?
Sure.
When I'm bringing it,
Well,
normally.
not really, because
So this is why I like doing
Can I
evolution.
can I finish my point?
People
Yeah,
ask
yeah.
me for evidence of evolution, I give it to them right then. And I don't have to have an argument. I don't have to have a philosophy. I don't have to talk
can I-
about probabilities.
can
I
I-
can just show the fact
But can
that
I
indicates.
just say something? Can I
Yes,
say-
please.
I tried to say the evidence, but then you questioned me on it, and then we
No.
have to go back on it. So I'm saying,
you just
can
tell-
I just say, and then we move on? Then we can start
Can
saying.
you just tell Aron your
Okay,
definition
so-
of God?
No. I want to hear the evidence.
Okay, so
Exactly.
okay, that there is a universe that there is a contingent universe.
Okay, so that's the fact, not evidence.
First,
so what is the
Man,
evidence?
goodness sakes, can
Right,
you like
so this fact is
just
this
okay?
fact,
Evidence, whatever you
whether
want to
there
call
is
it.
a God or whether there is not a God, this fact remains the same.
can I
so it
just-
is not evidence.
But can I just say something? Let me just say my things and then critique it, because you're critiquing each time and then I have to circle back, answer you, and then start again. Can I just say it and then you critique it? Is that fine? Okay. So that there is a universe, first line of evidence, fact, or whatever. Okay. That there is a contingent universe. That things within the universe are conformed to simple natural laws. Okay.
Right, another
That's number
indication
two.
that there is no God.
That's fine. Assess it later, but I'm saying yes, okay?
Right.
Thirdly, that these simple natural laws are such by which to bring about the evolution of rational creatures, okay?
Okay,
And
another,
fourth,
the way you
okay,
phrase
fourth-
it is a little muddy, but
Okay.
another
Better.
indication that there is
okay,
no God.
fourthly,
Okay,
fourthly, can I finish?
God, please.
carry on.
And the fourth one will be that there are these rational agents are conscious, okay?
What
They
does
are conscious
consciousness
beings.
have to do with
Okay, one
anything?
second. Okay, one second.
What does consciousness have to do with
Okay.
anything?
Can we assess it in a second? Because I mean, every time like you're jumping in saying, "Oh, but that's not."
We've
right,
got to like
that's right.
5, so let's
Okay.
keep going.
So no.
How many are there?
We'll just go with the 4. We'll go with the 4.
How many evidences of no God is he going to give me? Go ahead,
All
please.
you're stating, all you're stating the fact.
Okay.
You're not stating any
Okay.
evidence. You're stating fact.
Number 1. Okay. I think it's better first. I've said those 4 things, but let's just clarify. What do you mean by evidence, and what do you
The
mean by
fact
fact?
that indicates
So-
an objectively verifiable fact that is
That-
positively
that indicates
indicative
what?
of or exclusively concordant with only one available option over any other. This universe concords with no God. Every one of your examples concords with no God.
But can I say to you, in the philosophical literature, that will not be evidence. That will
I would-
literally.
I would agree. You
No,
have
I'm
not
saying-
given
no,
evidence,
I'm
yes.
saying the way you define evidence is not evidence. Because
But
some,
it is.
No, a proposition can have evidential value for multiple things, not just one thing.
But we're talking about scientific evidence.
Sorry?
Not, I understand that
No.
historians may have a different
No, I'm not talking
application.
about historians.
But I know that you're not talking about historians. I'm saying that historians have a different context of what evidence means. But in science, evidence has a strict definition. It is the facts that indicate.
Okay, but I'm not talking about science. I'm
We-
simply
I-
no.
Yes,
one second.
you are.
When you're talking about theism, you're talking about metaphysics. Metaphysics is a
I'm sorry, I'm
philosophical
talking about
discipline.
science. So I'm
Yeah, but
looking.
one
I'm
second.
looking for evidence.
No, but hold on.
So if you're telling me,
But can I?
okay.
Can I jump in? When you are talking or when you are debating about the existence of God, it's a metaphysical discussion. It's not a scientific discussion.
It is.
No, one second.
If there was a God, it would be a matter of
One
science.
second. You bring in scientific evidence to support the hypothesis or not, but it is a metaphysical discussion.
And science is the only
So I don't know
tool
what
we
you're
have to
talking about.
test anything with.
Of course it's not. You have metaphysics.
You can't test anything.
How can
in
you not
metaphysics.
test things in metaphysics?
How can you
Get
test
Sorry?
you
anything
anywhere.
in
So,
metaphysics?
okay, that there are moral values. Can we find that out or not? Or can you find that in a scientific way?
Yes, you can find it.
In science? Tell me how
Yes,
you can do that in
absolutely.
science.
Everything we
physical laws.
actually know about anything, we get from
Wait, so
science.
hold on. That statement is self-defeating, just to tell
How?
you. That everything that we know
Yeah.
comes from science. Is that scientific?
Yes.
How is that? Tell me. Did you
How?
use a scientific methodology to get to that statement?
Yes.
No, it's a self-defeating
Because
statement.
everything we want to say is true or false. There is a scientific way to determine
No,
that.
one second. You just made a categorical statement that's self-defeating.
But it's
okay?
not self-defeating.
You said
It is-
you said everything that we know,
Right.
I'm paraphrasing maybe, everything
Right.
that we can know to be true
Right.
is found through science.
We can demonstrate.
We can
that
demonstrate it through
yes.
science. Now that statement, demonstrate it through science.
What?
Demonstrate that sentence that you just uttered through
Okay.
science.
All right.
Because you
easy
believe
enough.
it to be true.
Yeah.
Yes.
Pick anything.
No, that statement.
Yeah.
Demonstrate it through science.
I will with this
Tell me now.
example. Pick anything you want. Let's
No, your
anything
state-
you want. Pick from all of the things you want to say.
You didn't- No, you didn't understand what I just said.
right, I think I did.
No, your statement you just made.
Was
One
it
second.
anything that you want to say is true or false? We can use science to determine
Okay.
that.
Now that statement, is it true?
The statement.
The statement you just
yes,
uttered.
because
Okay.
we can demonstrate
Now
that. And that
demonstrate
was
it
the
through
example.
science. Demonstrate
Good.
it through science.
Then are you going to let us do that?
Do it.
Let me do the thing you're asking me to do.
Demonstrate that
I
sentence.
said yes.
that you just said that is true for
Yes,
science.
I'm exactly doing
tell
that
me
thing.
that.
Quit interrupting the answer.
I won't. I'll let you speak. Sorry.
Okay, with the question.
Hold
So
on,
I
I'm
said,
sorry. Okay, we'll catch up after, yeah?
anything you want to say is true or false.
Yes.
We can demonstrate through science. You want to say true, pick something that you would say is true or false. That you think we can't prove through science.
But you don't understand why I just asked you. That categorical statement that you just uttered.
It's demonstrated by this example.
1 second.
It's demonstrated by this example.
No. The proposition itself.
Right.
That sentence.
Right.
That,
That
you just
very
uttered.
sentence.
That sentence.
That exact
But
sentence
1
is
second.
demonstrated by the
Did you-
example
no,
I'm giving
But
you.
1 second. That sentence that you just uttered, you did not use the scientific methodology to hold to that sentence being true.
Yes, I did because I
Tell
can
me
demonstrate
how.
it.
How scientifically?
And test it scientifically by giving you the example. The example was anything you want to say is true or false. We can use science to demonstrate that. So pick something.
Your
Shall I do
sentence.
it? Shall I do it?
but-
Because this
no.
is a waste of time, man.
This is
We've
not
had-
my
why is it a
sentence.
waste of
we've
time?
because we've had the same thing maybe 7 to 8
because-
times.
what's-
No, but
no,
his
but-
point is actually right. What you're speaking about is logical positivism, and he's challenging that.
Yes,
talking
I'm saying
about
to you,
logical
yes, you
positivism.
are because you're using the verification
No,
principle.
because I don't
You are
even
using-
get
it's
into
a self-defeating-
verificationism.
It's a self-defeating statement.
What he actually said is correct. That you're saying that you can statement that science is our best route of knowledge. You can't test that scientifically. That's
Which we
self-refuting.
can.
So he's
It's
actually
not
right.
self-refuting. It's
No, but I'm saying,
demonstrable.
no, but I'm saying,
And the way to demonstrate that very sentence was to use the example he's asking for.
no, it's not. No. So, 1 second.
And I'm not talking about logical
No,
positivism.
so I'm not.
And I don't get into verificationism.
No,
Everybody
but
wants to
that
paint me
is
with
a very.
something I don't
No,
know.
but I'm saying that is a form of the verification principle. That's why it hasn't been held by the majority of the majority of philosophers at least 40, 50 years.
I don't hold
Yeah,
the
so-
verification
But you have just
either.
uttered
You just said it.
You've just
No,
literally
I
uttered
didn't.
it. Yes, it is, and it's self-defeating.
It's not self-defeating.
It is because it shoots
If I
itself
can
in the
demonstrate,
foot.
if I can demonstrate the statement is true, and I can, then it's
COE,
not
yeah.
No, but
self-defeating.
you can't demonstrate it in a scientific way.
Yes,
That's the whole
we
way.
can.
How?
By the example I just gave
You
you.
can't demonstrate the verification principle through science.
All right, never mind.
No,
Never
so I'm
mind.
saying, so it's
I
self-defeating.
think you are self-refuting. We're having a nice time spinning around
No, no,
circles
I'm not. I'm
here.
just, I'm
Look,
just
I'm
saying.
coming in from a neutral perspective. He's actually right.
I'm just
my
saying.
ass.
No, I'm just saying. Philosophically, it was self-defeating. But secondly, anyway.
Okay, it's not because I can demonstrate.
Aaron, to be honest, you're wrong on this point.
Okay.
Just this point.
Yeah.
The rest of the conversation I didn't really
I've
get, but that
debated
point
you. You were wrong on everything you ever said.
Okay,
I'm not going to start being wrong now just because you're here.
Moral values.
No, wait,
Moral
wait.
values. How
Right.
can you find that out
Wait,
to
wait,
be
hang
true
on,
or
hang on,
false
hang on.
in a scientific way?
Aaron.
Because what?
The point that he actually made, you said that science is the best route of knowledge, correct?
Right.
And you
Well,
said
actually,
that,
I said that anything you say to be true or false, we have a scientific means of determining that.
Right.
And then he said, "Can you prove that sentence to be correct?" Yes, I can.
And you said
the way
scientifically.
that I can is by having him, and the way that I can prove it scientifically is by have you choose something that you can say is true or false,
then you can discuss it
and then we can show
scientifically.
how we can show that scientifically, proving the sentence,
that-
not self-refuting,
that- Chatty,
demonstrably correct.
can I explain why that's self-refuting?
Oh my God.
Let me just explain. Just 1 second. Yeah? Look, I'm just coming in from a neutral perspective.
No,
right?
you're
I am. Because you two are actually having this debate.
No, you're not.
Not
So?
entirely neutral.
So?
The
But why am I
key-
not
the-
neutral?
the
Why,
code of the discussion
why
is
could I
about
not be
the-
neutral if I'm a theist?
The core of the discussion was about whether God exists.
No,
No,
but
it
that's
wasn't.
what we
No,
were
no, that's
debating.
not what I
We were
heard.
debating
I
about.
heard-
So it's
we were about
entirely in
to-
isolation.
No, this
No,
is
but we were debating about verification.
Okay.
Which, by the way,
think it's disingenuous.
all I'm trying to say is, look,
No, but it wasn't about
his
theism, it was
his
about
actual
verification
point
at
is
that
actually
point.
The
correct.
reason for talking
And the
is
reason why,
talking about theism.
one second.
His
The rea-
point is that we can't be talking about God in a scientific way. If God was real, and I'm asking for evidence of God, damn Skippy, I'm asking for scientific evidence.
That
Now,
means-
if he doesn't
wait, hang
have
on.
scientific
Wait, hang
evidence, he can tell me he has evidence of a different
Okay, but-
type that doesn't qualify as scientific evidence,
No,
in
no,
which
but
case he
did-
can admit
did-
he has
did-
no
did-
scientific
can I
evidence.
just
Sorry.
clarify?
But
Okay.
one point here. That means you disagree with methodological naturalism.
No, it doesn't.
So what does methodological naturalism mean?
Methodological naturalism means that you don't come up with supernatural explanations for things.
Yeah, but it
Fantastic.
assumes metaphysical
So
naturalism.
how can you use a method which assumes methodological naturalism to prove something that's supernatural?
Again, if I'm asking for scientific evidence that it is going to have to be a body of objectively verifiable facts that positively conform to only
didn't answer
one
the question.
object.
You didn't actually answer the
Can I
question.
just?
I did actually
one
answer the
second. I'm
question.
actually trying to help you out. Just 1 second, yeah? So,
Ah,
look.
You are
the
maddening.
Aaron, relax. Here's the point, yeah?
Content over everything from your melody. Man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV.
You're saying we should have
Listen.
scientific that's what you're saying.
I'm asking for scientific
Okay.
or evidence.
So tell me this. Why is it that philosophers of science wouldn't say this?
Because they're philosophers, and therefore they want to jack everything up. I don't know.
I'll tell you.
that's
No,
the
no,
way to
wait,
paint
I'll tell you
This
what.
guy,
Wait, hang on.
in our debate, he came up with a philosophical definition of fact to mean exactly the opposite of what a fact
Hang on one
is.
second.
I am a philosopher, so I feel a little bit
Wait,
hurt by
wait,
that.
hang on.
Yeah, well,